Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people can't seem to comprehend the difference between an employee and a customer. And in this episode, you'll hear about crazy Karens attacking teenagers, violating parole, harassing deaf customers. It's gonna be a wild one. Subscribe if you haven't, and hey, I hope you enjoy these crazy tales. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's ridiculous, okay? We're diving in. Okay, so I live in a small town that's 95% English speaking. There are a few French families due to the local industry. I speak enough French, about as well as an 8-year-old native speaker, and I made friends with a neighbor who doesn't speak English and can't drive because of seizures. Her husband's been out of town for work for the last few months, so I've taken her grocery shopping and to run errands. My neighbor's computer died last week, so I take her to the big box computer store to look at a new one. I work in electronics as a technician, so I know a thing or two about brands, quality, pricing, and what computer to get based on her needs. I'm standing at the computer area with her, telling her about the specs, tower versus laptop, etc, when I notice someone in my peripheral vision, but I ignore it. Our conversation then switches over to school starting soon, as our daughters ride the bus together, when the lady behind us pokes me in the shoulder and starts barking in French, saying, "I need help too. Stop chatting and start helping." Do you know how hard it is to get help in French around here? Now, I do want to note that big box employees wear blue polo shirts and slacks, and I'm wearing a hippie maxi dress and Birkenstocks. Now, I start trying to explain that I don't work here, but I think that's when she picked up on my obvious Anglo accent. She starts talking to me like I'm a misbehaving toddler, and she says, "I need you to help set up my home network. I don't have time for you to chat about your kids. Do that when you're off the clock. Have fun finding a job once your manager hears that you're chatting about kids instead of working." Before I could say anything at this point, my neighbor pushes me out of the way, and she's about twice as big as the Karen yelling at me is. She walks up to the Karen and just shouts at her for like 2 minutes. I couldn't catch most of it because I only know school French, but I'm picking out a lot of swears. One of the staff comes up and asks what's going on, but they aren't paying him any attention. When he realizes that they're not English, he walks away. I guess he didn't think he could help. I then see Karen storming off in a huff, and my neighbor told me what she said, but she paraphrased it for me because my French isn't stellar. She basically said, "Who the F do you think you are bugging my friend? What about her says she works here? You're being very rude to my friend who's being very nice. If you asked nicely, I'm sure she would have helped you." So that was it. My neighbor is awesome. Guys, I love this post so much. It's just friends helping other friends. OP helps her neighbor by driving her around to do errands, and in return, the neighbor helps OP by defending them against wild Karens. I'd say it's a great relationship. I'll start out by explaining briefly that we had just moved to the area we're living in. I'm extremely new to the area, and it makes me a little more nervous than normal as I'm legally deaf. Now, that doesn't mean I can't hear anything at all, but you definitely gotta speak slowly and very loud, especially with everything going on nowadays with masks. I can lip read really well, but with the masks, I'm at a loss, unfortunately. So on this day, I was wandering the local Walmart. I typically carry a reusable mask with me, and today was the one day I didn't. I'm wearing my motorcycle helmet with the visor down instead of a mask. People have never seemed to mind letting me in as long as I keep my visor down while shopping. This makes me even more deaf than usual. My helmet is bright white, and I'm dressed in a bright yellow shirt and a pair of yoga pants. It's not hard to tell that I don't work here. Like, there's no mistaking me for an employee. I have my hearing aids in, but they tend to have a wide V effect with 3 separate mics, and I don't hear people behind me very well, if at all. It just mutes the background noise, so I can focus on what's in front of me. Even with hearing aids, I have serious difficulty hearing people with my helmet on. So here I am. I clearly have a few items in my hands, such as sandwich meats and bread, and I'm following the arrows they put down. I get to the soups, squat down, and I'm looking for a can of Campbell's mushroom soup. Suddenly, there's a very aggressive smack against my shoulder. I actually screamed because I hadn't seen her come up behind me, and was not expecting anyone to be close enough to actually touch me. The woman scared the absolute heck out of me, and the smack made me land hard on my butt, partially landing on and squishing my bread. I can suddenly see the woman. She's wearing her mask, gesturing like crazy. I can hear the murmur of her voice, but with the visor down and my helmet on, I can't understand her properly. My hearing aids are pressed against the side of the padding of my helmet, and they're moderately useless with the visor down. She doesn't react that I've fallen. She just gestures wildly, and her voice is rising. I can see her getting really angry, and I can kind of make out what I think she's saying, but not quite. So I just shake my head and say, I don't know. I know my response is muffled by my helmet because she keeps at it. While on my ass, I sign wildly, I don't know, all the while shrugging my shoulders and shaking my head hard. Unfortunately to her, maybe it looks like I'm saluting her, still on the ground. I do want to note that if I can hear you and I'm wearing my helmet with the visor down, you're speaking extremely loudly. She then says, in a voice loud enough for me to hear, "Where is the cat food?" There was a man behind her wearing a mask, who was socially distancing until she raised her voice. I can see him approach quickly. He doesn't work there either, and I can hear him literally yell at her. He's saying, "Hey lady, don't touch her, what's wrong with you?" So this attracts the attention of nearby people, and thankfully 2 people who actually work there. I can see the blue shirts coming, and I just skirt back from the lady as she turns away from me and starts bickering with the man. Now I can't hear most of it, but I can definitely see it escalating. I stand up, step back further, and brush myself off. I pick up my sandwich meats, but the bread is a lost cause. One employee clearly tries to de-escalate the situation, and she's just shrill and gesturing madly. I can no longer hear the man as he hasn't raised his voice anymore. One of the staff is now standing beside me, and I think she's asking me if I'm okay. I just shrug, throw off a few signs that says, "I'm deaf, sorry, I don't know her," and I point aggressively at the lady who scared me. The man is explaining everything that happened to the other staff member. The second employee seems to understand that I'm deaf and just nods. She motions for me to step back further from the argument, and I do. She then puts herself between myself and the small knot of people. There's a brief, heated discussion, the employee shaking his head, some of which I can hear and some of which I can't, as the man speaks to the other staff. I can hear her briefly again, something about never again. The lady is actually escorted from the store, her cart left behind, and I was super surprised by that. When all is said and done, things quiet down quickly. The customer who intervened points at me and flashes the OK symbol that most people know is the pointer finger to thumb with the 3 fingers out. I smiled and nodded and signed and loudly said, "Thank you," before the Walmart employee led me back to the area to get new bread. I flashed the man the peace sign before I left, and I signed thank you again before being led away. Guys, what a crazy encounter. Like, dealing with a crazy Karen when you're not hearing impaired is already a bad situation. But an OP situation with not being able to hear her properly, and not even knowing what she wants and seeing nothing but an angry woman, I can see that being super terrifying. Props to that man for coming to the rescue. So back before he joined the company we both now work for, my coworker Oscar was doing his rounds around the department store he worked at. He was the manager there. And on this night, he was talking to customers and employees, making sure everything was running smoothly. It was a slower than usual Monday, so Oscar was able to enjoy his stroll. He came upon a young teenage guest reorganizing the stuffed animals and making everything look neat, under the supervision of his mom. Oscar noticed that the guest was wearing noise-canceling headphones, and he says, "Thank you so much for making everything look neat. You've got an eye for detail." Hearing that, the mom was a bit embarrassed, and she says, "He likes to organize and clean up, as it helps him calm down when he gets overstimulated. I can get him to stop if he's being a problem though." With that, Oscar nods and says, "My son does the same thing. As long as it helps him, you're more than welcome to." He then looks at the boy and says, "You're doing a great job." He then left. Oscar decided to get some paperwork done, and then they heard a loud clattering and a cry. Oscar runs back to see this huge man who looked like he'd eaten one Thanksgiving dinner too many, as his button-up shirt was about to bust open, and he was standing over Joseph, the kid. Joseph had his hands over his ears, without headphones, and looking like a proverbial deer in headlights. The man was pointing at him and says, "Now that you aren't listening to music, are you gonna help me?" All the while, the mom was screaming, "Sir, my son's not an employee. He has autism." The man then looks at the mom with narrowed eyes and says, "Don't lie. He was wearing headphones." Now realizing the situation needed to be de-escalated, Oscar walks up, customer service smile on his face, although he was seething inside, and says, "May I help you, sir?" The man notices Oscar and says, "Thank goodness you're here. You really need to tell your employees," pointing to Joseph, "to not wear headphones on the job and stop covering for each other. I can't believe that you hire, insert R word. here. Now, the important thing to know about Oscar is this. While he's a kind man who will give you the last dollar in his pocket if you need it, he really doesn't take kindly to someone being treated badly, especially if it's a person with disabilities, as his younger son has autism. Oscar looks at the customer with a dad glare and says, "Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to watch your language and your actions. I can verify that these are a pair of guests and that he was rearranging the shelves because he wanted to. And even if they did work here, that doesn't give you the right to harass them." Just then, security walks over, apparently attracted by the commotion, and George goes from tomato red to bedsheet white. Oscar then turns to the mother and says, "Ma'am, if you want to press charges, we can help you with that." The mom was crying at this point, and she says, "No, I think it's best if we just leave." Oscar says to her, "Okay, if you think that's best." And of course, the man, now realizing that this would be the best time to leave, just walked away. Oscar then picked up the headphones and returned it to Joseph. And he says, "I apologize that you had to endure that. Is there anything I can do to make the situation better?" The mom says no, but we greatly appreciate it. The man never stepped foot in the store again. From then, Joseph and his mother would come into the department store to say hello and organize the shelves every Monday, with Oscar occasionally bringing out some extra toys for Joseph to put away if he wanted. Guys, I just want to say that that man should have been arrested and charged, and I'm upset that nothing happened. It just breaks my heart reading about that man harassing the kid while the mom was just in tears trying to defend her son. All I can say is Oscar was a lot calmer than I would have been. If I were in Oscar's shoes, I might have lost my job that day, guys. Like harassing a clearly terrified kid and then having the audacity to throw the R word around. Oh boy, I'd be swinging. So this story happened around 10 years ago. Some important background. My mom is paralyzed from the waist down, so my dad and I would take her grocery shopping every now and then. She had a motorized wheelchair, but it was too bulky to take with us to the store, so we brought her non-motorized wheelchair with us. One of those push ones. Dad would push her around while I would pull stuff off the shelves that she wanted, and then put them in our cart. I ran off to get a few things my mom wanted when out of nowhere, a random Karen begins yelling, "Hey miss," then whistling. And then the dreaded throat clear. I put the last item in the cart, turned around and said, "Can I help you?" And that's when she thrust a list at me and demanded, "Get me the stuff on my list." Now I should note that I look nothing like the employees, so I said, "No, I'm gonna go help my mom now. I think there's an employee at the front desk who can help you. I don't." Now before I could get another word out of my mouth, she screams, "You will help me now," while reaching out to grab me. She grabs my arm, and when I pulled away, it left some scratches on my arm. Of course, my dad freaks out upon hearing the commotion, and he shouts, "Hey, leave my daughter alone." My dad's voice was loud enough to get an employee to rush over. The employee asked if there's a problem, and my dad said, "This woman just assaulted my daughter. Do you have a first aid kit or something to help her out? Because I'm gonna call the cops while you get on this." Upon hearing the word cops, the lady just sunk to the floor crying and trying to say it was just a misunderstanding. When the cops arrived, I'd been bandaged up. The manager had come to listen to mine and my dad's story, as well as the employee describing the aftermath, and they went to the back with the manager to check the video. Meanwhile, the lady's crying and saying, "I'll lose my kids." The cops arrested her for assault on a minor, and they took her away crying. At the trial later, the two things I most remember was that she was on probation at the time, and that she did indeed lose custody of her kids. I think the father got them. She even tried to say it was an honest mistake. I thought she was an employee. Whereupon the judge says, even if she was an employee, what gives you the right to grab someone like that? The woman broke into more tears as the judge read her sentence. Guys, all she had to do was keep her hands to herself, and she couldn't. Like, whatever happened to the, "Excuse me, can you help me find this item? Oh, you don't work here? I thought you were an employee. Let me just go on with my day." But no, she just had to grab OP's arm and nuke her own life. Guys, maybe it's a good thing she got her kids taken away. I don't know. Okay, so the end result of this story, which I'll tell you up front, is that we lost the ability to order from several local Pizza Huts for life. Let me tell you why. So we used to have a phone number that was very similar to Pizza Hut. Their number was 555-455-5575. And our number was 555-455-5515. Now these two numbers are commonly mixed up for obvious reasons. And this was back before the days of cell phones and everyone having their own personal number. And we actually had to get caller ID because of this. For years, we had this Pizza Hut's client base call our house and order pizzas. The thing is, people will not listen when you tell them, sorry, wrong phone number. Like, we would have drunk people calling us back 4 to 5 times and then begin screaming into the phone, I know this is an effing Pizza Hut, you a-hole. This was normal, and the Pizza Hut was even aware of this, and they apologized when we would call them. They would never give us anything for free though, despite the massive inconvenience of the phone ringing off the hook. Well, Pizza Hut corporate then pays for an advertisement on paper, billboard, and the phone book. And guess what? They botched the numbers and put our number on the things for the phone number. Why? Because 1 and 7s are the same number, apparently. So our phone effing explodes. It goes from 3 to 5 phone calls a day to like 100 to 200 calls. Initially, we were directing people with a message that simply said, this is not Pizza Hut. Their number is this. And it didn't end. We would get calls with people screaming into the voice recording, I want an effing pizza. This is BS. I'm gonna kill whoever doesn't answer this effing phone. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've been told to go jump off a bridge for trying to direct someone to the correct place, and for some effing reason, no one ever listens. Well, upon this happening, my dad calls the Pizza Hut and says, look, all we want is to not have to change our phone numbers. If you guys will please change yours or pay for ours to be changed, we'll stop getting your damn phone calls. Now with that, the manager cussed at my dad, who had him on speakerphone, calling him a crapload of names and for getting him bad reviews, as well as losing customers to his branch, which is locally owned. He says it's costing their business a solid 10 grand easy over a phone number. And we're thinking, why not just change it? So my dad looks at the phone, hangs up and says, okay, you want to be like that about it? We'll play this game. My dad then instructs my 17-year-old self and my sister to take the calls from now on. If it rings, pick up the order and say, okay, your pizza should be there in about 1.5 hours. Then when they call back, tell them, sorry, the driver just left. And if they call back a third time, say, well, I can get you on the phone with my manager, but he's probably gonna kick your ass if you keep complaining. So 2 weeks pass and my dad tries to get the said Pizza Hut to change our number for free, never pointing out that they effed up their ad, as apparently they were completely oblivious to this fact. Again, the manager screams at dad saying, I don't have money to change your effing number. We even tried calling other Pizza Huts to get the issue resolved, with no real luck. So we fielded phone calls every day, all day long. We had friends come over and they loved partaking in the same thing. We had a general plan. Every other call would get a pizza delivery, and the other calls, we would get them really pissed off, saying, okay, do you want to speak to my manager? And then cold transfer them to the Pizza Hut. It took 6 more weeks of us doing this, and the Pizza Hut closed. A few weeks before they closed, we get a phone call from Pizza Hut corporate, who more or less threatened us with a cease and desist, and it sounded like they didn't really understand what was actually happening, as they accused us of stealing their phone calls. We called their corporate and explained what was going on, and even played our recordings of talking with them about the issue and them ignoring us. All they said is, you better stop, this is illegal, over and over again. And we didn't stop. A few weeks after the owner lost his shop, he called our house and was trying to argue with my dad about how bad of a person he was because he lost money. Apparently we had also pissed people off to the point that they actually went in and attacked him and the other staff. To this day, it cracks me up that a company can be so oblivious, and it's the single reason that I don't believe we live in anything close to a meritocracy. Anyone in this position who has any merit would instantly change the number, but not a corporation who has money to sue, and not a middle manager who has an ego problem. Man, all I can say is I would have changed that phone number so fast, guys. I don't know how OP and the family went on entertaining this for so long. I would have been driven absolutely crazy if I got like 200 calls a day. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, if you enjoyed the stories, do hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. An entitled idiot breaks into OP's house and then calls 911 when OP defends herself. It's such a crazy story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.